Poetry Center, bringing poetry to Paterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
As you know, today's reading is the culmination of a generous grant from the National Endowment for the Arts to the Poetry Center at Passaic County Community College. And the purpose of the grant was to provide poetry writing opportunities to the senior citizens of northern New Jersey. As project director, I set up a series of writing workshops in 4 different venues in Passaic County. All of them were led by professional poets, and most of them were led by Laura Boss, who's here today. And the results, yes. And the result was this wonderful anthology of your poem, and it contains a poem by each of the workshop leaders also. And although he's not here, I want to say thank you to Mark Hillringhouse. He's a well-known professional photographer who donated his photograph of the Whitestone Bridge for the cover. And some of you have met Maria Mazziotti Gillen, founder and executive director of the Poetry Center, but let me tell you more about her. You know, of course, that she is a mentor for established poets, but emerging poets, a remarkably generous lady. And in addition to being the founder and executive director of the Poetry Center at Passaic County Community College in Paterson, she's the editor of the Paterson Literary Review, and as though that weren't enough, she's the director of the creative writing program in SUNY Binghamton and professor of poetry at Binghamton University, State University of New York. So she commutes upstate and down to Paterson. She has 14 books of poetry. And a new one is coming out in September 2012 called The Place I Call Home. And I've seen an advanced copy of that, so you should be very enthusiastic when you see that one in September. Her other books, some of them are The Weather of Old Seasons, Where I Come From, Things My Mother Told Me, Italian Women in Black Dresses, All That Lies Between Us, and the latest book, What We Pass On, Collected Poems, 1980 to 2009, and they're all Guernica editions. And some of them are on a table there, along with, I believe Laura has some books there, and of course Vivian Shipley does, but we'll come to Vivian Shipley in a few minutes. Maria is co-editor with her daughter Jennifer of 4 anthologies, Unsettling America, Identity Lessons, and Growing Up Ethnic in America, both all Penguin Putnam, and Italian American Writers on New Jersey. And her work has appeared in numerous journals, anthologies, and Maria is a recipient of many awards. And I will just tell you, most recently, the 2011 Barnes & Noble Writers for Writers Award from Poets and Writers. And her book, All That Lies Between Us, won the American Book Award in 2008. She also won the 2008 Chancellor's Award for Scholarship and Creative Endeavor from Binghamton University, and the 2008 Sheila Motten Award, Primo Nazionale Belmoro, the first annual John Fante and Pietro Di Donato Award, the Aniello Laurie Award, the May Sarton Award, the Fearing Houghton Award. That's enough? Oh dear. Well, there are more. Her poems have been read on NPR, and she's been featured on PBS TV. I'll just give you a couple of programs. Garrison Keillor read her work on the Writer's Almanac. She was interviewed and read her poems on NPR, All Things Considered, The Brian Lehrer Show, The Poet and the Poem, Leonard Lopate, and it goes on and on. And she's read her poems numerous times at universities, festivals, poetry centers throughout the United States and in Italy, France, all over the world. And more locally, she has read at Wanacue Reserve for what was it, the Italian American Writers Organization, and we'll be doing so again sometime soon. I don't know the date, but you can tell. The 23rd of this month, just in a couple of weeks. And the Maria Mazziotti Gillen collection of her papers is housed at Binghamton University. And now Maria was going to say a quick hello, not a quick, I hope more than a quick hello, and welcome all of you. And it is she who's responsible for everything that we've done, because she's the executive director of the Poetry Center, and the National Endowment for the Arts Award grant was awarded to the Poetry Center. So we have Maria to thank for all of this.
I'm so pleased to see this nice group here, and seeing you all here makes me realize that I'm going to run some, this is the way every idea I've ever had starts. Some little thing happens, and then all of a sudden I think, oh, you know, I could do X. So I think one of the things that I'm going to do, seeing this group of people here, is to see if I could set up a series of readings here as well as in Patterson, because I see a lot of people here, some who come to Patterson, but some who do not, and it might find this more convenient. This also has very easy parking, I must say, and so that's one of the things that I'd like to do. I do want to thank the National Endowment for the Arts, and I also want to thank Passaic County Community College and the president of Passaic County Community College, Steve Rose, who has always been immensely supportive of all the Poetry Center programs and all the other programs that we do through Cultural Affairs Department, the art, the Theater and Poetry Project, which Susan coordinates with the Patterson Public Schools, and a number of other programs that we do, including the Passaic County Cultural and Heritage Council that gives out grants to arts organizations in Passaic County for cultural programming. I'm sure you don't want to hear any more about that, but I do want to welcome you here today. I hope you'll come back if we run a series here in the next school year, and I hope that we will be able to run some more workshops for senior citizens. It seems to have been a very popular program and a very successful program, and if this anthology is any example, I think that there are a lot of really talented people who are mature adults, as Susan so kindly put it, lumping us all into the mature adult category. And I also want to particularly thank Susan for all the hard work that she did to put this together, and Laura Boss for the number of workshops that she led, and Vivian Shipley for coming all the way from New Haven to be with us today and to share her wonderful poems with us. I'm going to bring Susan back because she's going to actually run this program today. It's hard for me to let go, but occasionally I do. Susan. It's very hard, isn't it?
I have a list of everybody who is here, and we're going to be reading the poems in alphabetic order by last name. That's how they are arranged in the book, and you can follow along. I should mention, everybody who has a poem in the book should have received 2 free copies of the anthology, Bridges, and if you didn't, let me know, and I will certainly give it to you. And if you want more for presents and gifts, which I'm sure everybody will love to receive, they are available for more than, beyond the 2 that you got for free. We are selling them for $5 a piece. And,
Susan,
yes?
Mention open captioning.
Oh, I should, yes. I've never actually done this before, and this is open captioning is done by Randy Friedman, and I think that this is just a wonderful thing so that you can follow along. It's meant specifically for people who have hearing impairments, but I think it's really quite wonderful for everybody. So I'm very pleased that we had this in the grant proposal. I don't even know that I would have thought of it on my own. So, yes, we want to say thank you. Thank you for doing this. And I believe Cheryl is not here. No, okay, so we'll move right along to Deborah Garrish.
No, it's fine. Hello, everyone. I just want to thank you for organizing. This is an incredible get-together and gathering of poets. I'm going to read a poem called Grandfather's Funeral, December 1st, 1964. It's obviously a heritage poem. I'll be making reference to Diyarbakir, Turkey, which is where my grandparents, who were of Armenian heritage, had lived for generations and then fled from that city 1 year before the Armenian genocide. This is called Grandfather's Funeral, December 1st, 1964. I remember I just turned 15 at the hospital. Your enlarged stomach, thick white hair, radiant face. The sterile room, its lack of movement, hushed but for the foreign voice of the humming oxygen tank shaking our sky. Massive heart attack, age 83. Thinking of my grandfather's Bible, the largest I ever saw, resting on the dresser in his bedroom, as we all file into the funeral home, tiny ants dragging regrets behind them. Thinking of his stories, how he ended here, how he began here in Patterson, 1914, how he and his bride fled Diyarbakir, Turkey, that unforgettable July, less than 1 year before the Armenian genocide. Sold all her jewelry, her heavy gold heart, his etched timepiece and chain, her rings, a small offering for passage for two on the Oceanic's last voyage. They were only teenagers as they left their family, fled in a horse and buggy that steamy summer afternoon. The screeching parakeets, the undulating fields of watermelons, how grandfather's weeping mother couldn't persuade the young couple to stay, sent her sons to stop them, his brothers, Joseph and Abraham, tugging at my grandpa's coattails, screaming, "Don't go, please, don't go," chasing them down the dusky road as they hightailed it to America.
Thank you. And now Gail Gerwin.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Susan, Maria, Laura. I've taken 4 poetry intensives, weekend intensives with Maria and Laura, and they often have us writing from photographs. And I feel very inspired by a lot of the photographs that I have. And this is one which later on I'll put down, and you can see the actual photo is about 1 inch by 1 inch. And the other thing that delights me is someone finally called me mature. A lot of my friends would disagree. The poem is called Boardwalk, circa 1950. We're on the boardwalk in Atlantic City, my sister and I. She in her new mouton fur, leopard trim around the wrists and collar. I protected from November chill by a gray wool coat from Ginsberg's in Passaic, double row of large barrel buttons down the front, a warm cloche hat to cover my ears. When I ask about our ages in the photo, she tells me she's still in high school. I'm 16 or 17, she says. She's 7 years older. I'm 7 years younger. 7 years younger for life. Our mouths agape. We feed fat pigeons. They flit above, skim our shoulders, cluster on our hands to nip kernels bought at the stand in the strip of open storefronts. Behind us, a pavilion's slanted roof, where the emblem Childs in bold white script splashes from eave to eave, beckons tourists to dine. For years, our father drove the family to Atlantic City for Thanksgiving, to the Traymore Hotel at Illinois Avenue, a majestic building with golden roof caps, ocean views, and later, a glass-bottom indoor pool, a luxury unknown back home. I find this photo treasure in a fruitless attempt to organize my home as birthdays pass, as friends die, as growing grandchildren grace our family. I scan it, sharpen edges, but leave grooves of age that mar the image. The young sisters, frozen statues in the center, remain unscathed, captured by the parent who holds the Kodak brownie box. Mother or father snaps us without a thought toward the future, when they will rest together under winter's hard earth, when they will leave my sister, forever 7 years older, and me, still 7 years younger for life, to recall Novembers when we fed fat pigeons on the boardwalk in Atlantic City. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Linda Gilchik.
Hello, I'm Linda Gilchik. 4 of us here today are from Wanacue Reserve, a condo development 2 miles north of here. We want to express our deep thanks to the National Endowment for the Arts and to Passaic Community College, represented by Susan Amsterdam, who wrote the grant and supervised this program.
I didn't write the grant.
Well, you...
She administered it.
Right, which is wonderful. We realized right away that Susan herself is a gifted poet. We have grown so much because of the skill and warmth of the professional poets who guided us. We loved our sessions with Laura Bush, M.L. Liebler, and Curtis Lampkin. We learned from them the spirit of modern poetry and profited deeply from their critiques. The hidden benefit of the NEA program is the opportunity to be intimate and trusting with each other as writers. Writing poetry is so self-revealing that it requires mutual trust. We experience true joy in each other's company because the professional poets created the magical ambience for us. Thank you all for these great gifts. I'm going to read my poem, Always There. I received a call from my mother. My dad was taken to the hospital. A simple procedure and not to worry. How does a child not worry about her parents? I have somehow exchanged roles, and now the parent and they the child. The day went by slowly, and I anxiously waited for a call. The call finally came. The procedure went well, but Dad wasn't doing too well. I rushed to the hospital and found him connected to machines and wondered what went wrong. I ran to his side, but told he couldn't hear my words. I shouted, "Dad, Dad, it's me! Wake up, wake up!" Days turned into weeks, and my visits were constant, but there was no change. I watched the screen and the red and white lines showing his heartbeat and pulse. I took a second look. The lines were now flat. I ran for the nurse. She said, "He's going." No, don't go. Please don't go. I'm not ready to say goodbye. But I never would be ready to say that final goodbye. With that, he opened his eyes, and I saw a light in his baby blue eyes reflecting his kindness and caring. He was saying goodbye, but somehow I knew he would always be there when I needed him. Thank you. This is nerve-wracking.
Thank you. And Nancy Jankner.
I'm Nancy Jankner from the Wanacue Reserve Poetry Group. I'd like to dedicate this poem to my husband, Larry Jankner, who is the wind beneath my wings. A day that changed my life. I tried to prepare my parents for the letter that I read. It said, "You have not been accepted to attend Brooklyn College as a matriculated student." My mother understood the reality of the letter. My father thought I was making it up. He sat and read the letter to himself. He put it down silently. My father turned his head away from me. His eyes and mouth sagged downward. He rose from his chair and slowly walked away. There was a look of pain on his face that I had never seen before. I was the cause of his pain. It tore me apart. He thought I was joking when I said my grades weren't high enough. Finally, he believed me. I felt like I'd fallen off a cliff and no one was there to catch me. What would I do with my life? I took the road less traveled. My friends went to college during the day. I worked during the day and went to school at night. I got my BS degree. I got my master's degree. I got 30 credits beyond my master's degree. I became a teacher. I know I made my father proud. I made myself proud too. He did not have to say a word. I just knew.
Thank you. And now Marge Kellerman.
The name of my poem is Red Pencil, and it's for Mary, my friend, my workshop classmate, and copy editor. Here she comes, red pencil in hand, menacing all in her path. Sharpened every morning, that darn red pencil. Sharpened to an almost lethal point, that darn red pencil. She wears it down with circles and slashes and underlines, filling in missing punctuation and correcting misspellings, rearranging words more to her liking. I'm seeing red. Make red marks on my paper, as many as you like, but you can't rearrange the words in my head.
Thank you. And Diane Corey.
I was in the workshop on March 10th, the last day with Laura Boss, and she gave us so many good prompts, and I didn't know which one to choose, and then I thought of the date, and I came up with this poem. On March 10, I think of Claire. Today is her birthday. Claire, my father's kid sister, who made us laugh, was always kind, and would love us forever. How we'd rush to be near her at the family table, beg her to curl our hair, teach us to jitterbug, and tell us stories. Her laughing green eyes and jingling gold bangles signaling her spirit and joy. Her portrait hangs now in my home, her face in the painting not quite as I recall. She is forever young, as the song says, while I am not. I catch her radiance and smile as I did at 12, then remember a day soon after, my father at the phone. She's gone? I hid. I listened to words I did not want, my parents quietly planning. I disbelieved. I despaired. Today I look into her eyes, recreated by an artist who never knew her. I lived that long ago day. She was gone. I grew up too soon. Everything changed.
Thank you. And now Mary Loudon. Mary. She of the red pencil.
She of the red pencil. Even now, I'm editing my own poem. It is a curse. First of all, my heartfelt thanks to Maria and Laura and Susan for helping make this event possible, helping us get our poetry juices flowing again, and also to Vivian for coming all the way to Connecticut to share her readings with us later on. I should say that I'm a tomboy. I've always been a tomboy. My friends in the second row know that I'm always covered with dog hair. So even though I may put on my poetry garb today and leave my farm clothes behind, my black pants will be covered with white dog hair and my white jacket will be covered with black dog hair. So I live on a farm in Upper Greenwood Lake. I've lived on a farm all my life. I started out on a dairy farm in West Virginia with my parents, and I moved to Kentucky, where I understand Vivian also lived. I lived on a horse farm as a caretaker. I lived on a tobacco farm. Then I moved to the upstate New York in the Adirondacks, where there were more mosquitoes than any other possible living creature. And then I moved also to the Maritimes in Canada, where I shared a farm with bear and moose and more mosquitoes and black flies than you can imagine. So now I'm back in New Jersey, in northern New Jersey, on a small farm, and my husband and I share our love of animals, and we have horses and pigs and chickens and ducks and whatever. I can't even, too many to make. I really don't have pigs, sorry. In 2008, I jotted down some thoughts of mine when I had an incident with a little red-tailed hawk that we found in the woods on my farm. And I just let the thoughts lie there until I met Laura Boss, and we had a workshop with her in West Milford. And I revised my thoughts into a poem, and that's what I'm going to read to you today. It's a true story of nature red in tooth and claw, I guess. And I'm sure that anyone who loves animals will understand that it's really painful to relate this even 4 years later. My little red tail. You fell from the highest nest in a tall oak tree beside the woodland path we hike on every day. No one knows how long you lay there, stoic, quiet, feigning invisibility, ruffled feathers blended with rotting leaves that might have cushioned your fall. Not one of our dogs noticed your gangly body, nor smelled the signs of stress at the base of the oak. My husband saw you sitting in the leaves one morning and carried you carefully to our country cottage. He called me to come and see what he had found. You sat erect but tense and tired in a small box on the deck. I cautiously filled it with clean hay, careful not to touch you. Your fluffy head passed side to side, feathers ruffled. You were wary, and your bright black eyes searched my timid face. At first, you seemed enraged. I thought you might attack. Your beak was large and curved, sharp and open. You had the heart of a raptor, fearless, fierce, and free. Ravenous little fledgling, you were determined to live. You grabbed the solid chunks of juicy beef with gusto. I chopped the meat until you had your fill, and I rejoiced. Your hearty appetite was a wonderful sign. You would live, you would grow, you would someday fly into the clouds. Not wanting to frighten you, I did not touch you. Your eyes watched me constantly. I fed you every hour. When you were full, I returned you to the nesting tree and left you there, propped inside a bowl of hay, looking up at me. You peeped in vain for several lonely hours. I spied on you from time to time, hoping nature would take charge. But no mother came, no fledgling siblings cried, no hawk swooped down to claim her own. It broke my heart. I did not know the length of time that you and she had been apart. You were hungry again. You peeped. I took you home and placed you in your box. I did not touch you more. Your watchful eyes searched my face. Again, I fed you on the hour. A night, a day had passed. You ate upon each hour, your cries demanding, harsh and shrill. I took pride to think your avian brain had learned my face. I fed you chunks of beef and feared no more that you would plunge your beak into my palm. Your eyes met mine, and maybe insight passed from hawk to human and back again, or so I hoped. I yearned to understand your shrieks, your tiny peeps. I fell asleep that night, lost in impossible avian dreams of you and me together flying high above the Jersey hills. The second dawn, I rose and rushed to feed you in your covered box. Suddenly, I sensed that all was wrong. I found you weak and quiet, your peeps subdued. You barely lifted up your head. Your eyes no longer tried to meet my own. You begged and ate no more. And then, as suddenly as you had come to me, you passed from me. You died. I could not move or breathe. I felt numb and dull, as you had been in those final dying hours before that magnificent rosy dawn. Your dangling, gray, disheveled wings spread out between my hands. Your head fell back, your belly up, as tears streamed down my face. At long last, I examined you in depth, in death, and I found the awful truth. Oh, tiny baby red-tailed hawk, your zest for life had known no bounds. Your instinct to survive was strong. You ate to live, though you were dead. I found the gaping hole within your chest, the pain that you concealed. From tallest tree, the longest, hardest fall, it took its toll. That fall, or some attack from land or air, had injured you, and multiplying maggots had sapped your waning strength. As you ate the beef with gusto from my hands and peeped for more, just the same, unknown to me, those wily worms were eating you. Long before we found you, before I tried to help, your fate was sealed. From me, your suffering was concealed. But your hawk mother knew. She surely knew and flew away and left you there beneath the tree to die. I cried. My best intentions only served to lengthen all your pain. Caressing your body in my hands, I mourned for what I did not know and could not change. In life, you were in death. There was no saving you. I carried my lifeless baby into the early morning sun and placed it in its little box with hay. Hearing distant cries, I glanced upward at the sky. Below the clouds that scudded by, 2 hawks were slowly circling overhead above the deck. I heard their desperate shrieks and saw their powerful outstretched wings. I sat in awe and watched them soar until they finally flew away. A feeling of connection to all living things upon this earth had filled my heart, a peaceful sadness that I barely understood. I write this not to end my story well, but to tell the truth of what I saw. High up there, within the clouds, 2 red-tailed hawks had said farewell. They flew to other dark green forests in these northern Jersey hills. In noonday sun, I also said my last goodbye. I lowered the silent box and buried my courageous little bird beside the shimmering pond. And that was all I ever knew of you, my little red tail, mi gabilan.
Thank you. Thank you. And now Holly Nolan.
Hello. I'm another of the Wanakee Reserve girls.
It's okay.
We're adults. I'm going to be very perverse and not read either of the items in the book because Laura said I could read this. So this I entitled Winter Flight, 1956, about my extraordinary experience in my young life. Healthy young bride, I forgot to say, it's 5 stanzas of 5 lines each. Healthy young bride of 19, full of risk and marital glee, I fly alone to join my groom, already returned from wedding leave, to his role in occupied Germany. My ticket places me at the very front, facing the bulkhead of polished wood on the handsome transport Super G, pride of TWA 1 year before the first jets took to the skies. 6 hours out from New York, over February's Atlantic Ocean, flashing light awakens me. It's the closest starboard engine, flaming, blazing in the night. The plane banks sharply downward with a clamor of screaming bodies thrown from their bunks, with luggage flying while pursers, silent and pasty white, try to clamber toward the cockpit. Now they return, glassy-eyed, unable to climb back up the pitching aisle, useless as children as we descend. My life, scarcely yet begun, shall quickly end in the frigid deep. My groom will stagger with disbelief, sobbing, shouting, mad with despair. Oh God, the port engine is now ablaze. We fall, careening down, leaving the sky we trust. Suddenly, flashing stops and all goes dark. This shuddering behemoth of steel steadies. 2 remaining engines churning. Gradually, it finds the air. It lofts. It lifts us. We find each other's eyes and we weep. Dear, pitiful, staggering home in the sky. Dear pilot strangers trying to save us. These men choose not to lower our wheels, but land us at last on our belly of steel, shaking us alive on the Newfoundland ice.
Thank you. And now Ed Schroback.
I had no intention to come today, but a 2-hour window miraculously opened up for my 4 jobs, and I told my wife I have to go. And she said, why? And I said, I owe it to these people. She didn't understand, but I think each person in this audience probably can. I took advantage of the free therapy with Laura and the unique opportunity to express myself. I just want to also thank Susan for all her hard work. My poem is called Failure and Redemption. I was kicked out of 2 high schools. I failed out of college. My mother was a schizophrenic, so you get the idea. If failure is the best education, then I have earned my PhD. Blood, sweat, and tears, kicked in the rear, starting with nothing but fear, continuing with less, getting knocked in the head, didn't get close to bringing out my best. Teeth got pulled with no Novocaine, that's true. I felt an axe grinding through my brain. I fell down deep into the dredges, tearing skin on the ragged edges. That made me face the pledges made to myself and others, especially my friends, sisters, and brothers. It forced me to examine the surface of epiphany, embarrassment, sin, and purpose. My whole life, I was told I would never make it. Ask that brick wall as I tried to break it. The fire in my gut burned so hot as my ulcer untwists knot by knot.
Thank you. And now Anita Tornow.
Okay, I'm not from Wanacue Reserve. I kind of think that's terrible because you people seem like so nice here. I'm from West Milford, and I was thrilled to see that we were having a poetry seminar in West Milford because I started writing poetry a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, I was only able to make the first one and the last one because I work as a bank teller and they were on bank holidays. So I'm sorry I didn't get everyone, but it was amazing how I had writer's block, and the minute I sat down with Laura and everyone else, I could just keep writing and writing and writing. It just came and flowed out, and I thank you for that. My poem is called Birth and Rebirth. We all waited in the hallway while our first grandchild was being born. The clock ticked away oh so slowly. How long till we see him or her? Audrey's family was there, Elisa, Kaylin, you and I. We tried to find things to talk about, all the while looking at the door through which the baby would come. Finally, Aaron came through the door with his new son, Ethan Ryan. Of course he was adorable. How could he not be? He was our grandson. After congratulating Aaron, we all hugged and kissed. You went to everyone but me. I had to go to you. I then finally admitted to myself that something was wrong with our marriage. I thought you'd come to me first, but it seems I didn't even matter. My feelings were right since our relationship slowly died. You found time for all your activities and for another, as I would discover, but found no time for me. You left me a year and a half later, and now we are divorced. But my life is so much better now than when I was with you. Many new activities, many new friends, a place of my own, and a man who really loves me. My self-esteem, something I lacked for so many years, is now present in all that I do. Thank you for letting me go, for bringing out a new me, a me who is finally proud of who I am.
Thank you. And Eileen Van Hook. I see I made a proofreading error here. This is one that's not in alphabetic order.
Thank you. Hello. My poem is called The Weaver. My father's hands pitched his way to high school fame and my mother's attention. My father's hands took my mother's hand in marriage, despite reservations about his return from war. My father's hands carried a wounded comrade under fire to safety and a future. My father's hands wove cloth and dreams until machines rendered him obsolete. My father's hands supported our family as a security guard, checking locks and IDs while wondering about his own. My father's hands blistered from digging graves to dress our hands in lace-trimmed gloves. My father's hands directed traffic at the mall, producing a magical Christmas at home. My father's hands finessed fly rods with the grace of an artist, dazzling rainbow trout with dancing flies. My father's hands tickled his grandchildren till they cried and were warned not to sit near him. My father's hands raised 5 children, scores of animals, and for a time, too many drinks to his lips. My father's hands, trembling with Alzheimer's, picked at his clothing as though trying to unravel the flawed fabric of his life.
Thank you. And now Lois Wolfer.
Here comes another Wanacue lady.
One among many mature people, individuals, girls. And of course, I thank all of the people who already have been thanked. I think we all appreciate what they've done for us. And I'm going to do what the other Wanacue lady did, which is read a poem that is not in the anthology. I was tempted because, coincidentally, both of the poems in the anthology are about my son. One when he was a child and one when he was an adolescent. But I decided that I would write about an experience that I had when I was an adolescent. I don't know how many of you have been to the Museum of Modern Art over the years. Years ago, there was a small room that housed only 2 statues. And that's what I'm going to read to you about. It's called Brando, meaning Marlon Brando. Brando at the museum. Of course, we're all young enough to remember Marlon Brando.
Yes.
Okay. A room in the Museum of Modern Art, spare, with only 2 students there on the bench they share to study the Lembrook Statues. The 2 serene and elegant figures that survived the violence and ravages of war. A kneeling woman, an upright man, separate, yet each a part of the other, home in a room for them alone. The girls struggle to comprehend what these figures have endured, what they represent. History records the desperate act, the risks to save these masterworks, the lives committed to the pact during every phase of the long journey to safety, a nation's heritage preserved. 2 stone figures that defined life for a grief-stricken world. 2 girls so innocent they can only look and wonder. A movement at the door, welcomed. They don't want to be alone to struggle with such daunting thoughts as what is worth saving, what should endure, what separates virtue from corruption. They turn their heads and stare, stunned in the presence of their idol. A man whose face, larger than life, they've gazed at on the silver screen. A star come down to earth, something they can talk about, dream about, and it's clear. They're simply adolescents, with no pretense at wisdom when Marlon Brando walks among them. In later years, they will understand the truth, that great art exists beyond the moment, and even ordinary people can preserve that which abides beyond illusion. Thank you. And now I'll read my poem that I wrote in Maria's workshop. And her prompt was something like to describe somebody, remember what somebody looked like and what it felt like. And I started writing this poem, and it suddenly took on a trajectory of its own. It's called Metamorphosis. My love, you were such a big man. At 6'6", you towered above us all, reminiscent of a patriarch with your gray beard, sonorous voice, and commanding manner. I think of you, seated behind your massive desk of polished mahogany, an emblem of the authority you enjoyed. You loved to take care of me, and I loved it too. Your strength reassured me, and I felt so safe. You were still strong the evening of your death. You had insisted on coming home to die in your own bed, in your own home, all the while instructing me how to manage my life without you. You were brave. I was terrified. But 7 years have passed, and I'm in a different place from where I was that night when I needed you so desperately. Yes, I'm alone and often lonely, but no longer needy. And I feel disloyal. Thank you. And now I would like to have Laura Boss and Maria Mazziotti Gillen read their poems. Laura would like you to do yours first.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for the enormous effort you made to get everything to work together. I think only you could have done that. And thank you, Maria. I always said to Maria, if she had gone into business, she would be president of, or head of CEO of IBM. She has so much vision, and she's so incredibly hardworking. And I also want to add, for those participants in our mature adult group, it was an absolute joy to work with you. The intelligence, the perception, the sensitivity, it just really was unforgettable. It will be unforgettable, and it's always going to be memorable to me. So I hope that maybe there will be a possibility that it will happen again, or at least you'll continue your writing, but at least that door to poetry is open to you. Okay, I'm going to read a poem from my book, Flashlight, that was selected for the anthology, because I can't quite find it. Oh, that's good. Thank you. See how organized she is? Okay. Airborne. And I wrote this poem after hearing the news of JFK Jr.'s crash. And I was reading with Stanley Kunitz. I was in the back row. He was in the front row. The men were in the front. The women were in the back at the United Nations. And he told me something. He said, whenever you read a title and then you say anything, go back and read your title again. So, Airborne. Listening to the reports of JFK Jr.'s plane missing after leaving Caldwell Airport. Years ago at Caldwell Airport, I left in a tiny plane my 16-year-old was piloting. The two of us in this one-engine, seemingly paper plane he had pushed back with one hand while checking it before we left. I did not want to be in this plane, but it was just after I had separated from his father, and my guilt was trying to make me please this son I had so displeased by leaving his father. The guy I was going with at the time had put his gold cross around my neck and was crying as we left, though his fear would not let him come up with us. My son said I was brave. All his friends who had come up with him were either screaming or throwing up at this point in the trip. We circled over New York City. We headed up to Maine, where my older son was going to school. There was no control tower person, but my son landed after a few more circles. Coming back from Maine that night, my son told me to scan the horizon for planes too near to us. He told me I was right. He shouldn't be flying at night, that everything looked the same at night. He had me hold the map, which he circled with his flashlight, trying to find out exactly where we were. I asked him if he had another battery for his flashlight or even another flashlight. He said no. I told him I'd buy him another flashlight when we got back. He told me if for any reason he passes out or hits his head, I should click on the center radio station and they tell me how to fly the plane in. When we finally land, I ask him if his father has ever gone up with him. No, he replies. He says he's not ready. I'm not ready either, I tell myself, and I also think that my former husband is smarter than I thought he was. But I also think how women try to please males, to so often do things they don't want to do, just to please a man, whether it be family or a lover. And I think how Carolyn Bessette, who according to the news and family reports did not want JFK Jr. to fly his own plane, and how she and even her older sister tried to please him, to show him that they did believe in him by climbing into that private plane. And I know how lucky I was when I got off that small one-engine plane at Caldwell Airport so many years ago. And I think how unlucky those other women were when leaving Caldwell Airport Friday night, that good intentions, guilt, and yes, even love cannot always keep one airborne. Thank you.